I believe this one will go a lot quicker.
I apologize to the chairs of the special OMB committee. It was not my fault. Councilman Gill decided because he's waiting, to continue with the broadcasting. So we're here now.
I just saw Councilman Clark on the screen, and now he's not. So, oh, there he is.
He's there.
Happy New Year. How are you?
Good afternoon, good evening, good night. What a day.
Yeah, what's the latest in Washington?
Pandemonium.
Who got shot died.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I believe that they have already somewhat secured the Capitol, but Congress has not reconvened yet until it's absolutely secure.
It's hard to imagine they got surprised.
I know, right?
I don't understand why they would not have anticipated this.
Exactly. I think it's something to do with the man that occupies the White House.
The House and Senate have announced that they're reconvening tonight.
Okay. So, Councilman Gale, I was right on my analysis, my prediction.
I don't recall. Remind.
The two Senate seats.
The two Senate. Oh, we got them both. Excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
In the midst of all this, they did call the election for Senator.
For public access to just send a text that we're live.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
So I just got a text from Hartford Public Access. They have audio, but not video yet, so it's going to be a couple of minutes.
If we're just waiting, can I ask just a quick question? I don't want to mix the two meetings, but what's the proper way for us to get access to the professor's data?
Councilman Dale, I believe he send that data to you via email that you can forward to Mr. Sheik, right?
Thank you.
He's easy to reach.
No, I know that, but what we got today was not the presentation. The underlying data in order to really respond, but that's fine. I'll contact them directly.
Okay, we're going live in 2 minutes. Live in 10 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our special meeting of the Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee for today, January 6th, 2021. Happy New Year to our members of our Council, Development Services, and our viewing audience. We are My name is Councilman TJ Clark II. I am the council majority leader, and we are joined by our council president, Mally DiRosato, who is a voting member. We are also joined by Councilwoman Wildelis Bermudez, who is a voting member, Councilman John Q. Gale, who is a voting member, and Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, who is a voting member. We also joined by non-voting members, Councilwoman Marilyn E. Rossetti, and also to Councilman Nick LeBron. And we are also joined by members of our Development Services team, our Director of Development Services, former Deputy Mayor I. Charles Matthews. We have our Director of Planning, Amy Chambers, our Director of Economic Development, Aaron Howard, and our Corporation Counsel, Howard Rifkin. And so we have one item on our agenda tonight. It is agenda item is Mayor Bronin with accompanying resolution amending the amended settlement agreement to extend the time by which Shelbourne Properties can respond to the Historic Preservation Commission's concerns and obtain the necessary permits and approvals. And due to the discussion of this matter, we are joined by Alan Lazowski, who is the chairman and CEO of Last Parking, as well as David Schick, who is the senior strategist for Shelbourne Management. I'll leave it in the hands of I. Charles Matthews or Amy to give us an overall synopsis, and then we will have a presentation by Mr. Lazowski and Mr. Schick.
Good evening, council members. I'm here in the capacity of answering questions with regard to the Historic Preservation Commission. So I'm not sure if I. Charles or Howard perhaps are more appropriate to introduce this particular matter.
Okay, thank you for that, Amy. Mr. Corporation Counsel, would you like to give us a brief synopsis as to why we are here and who will be presenting?
Sure, I think I can do that. I don't have a synopsis to give. I gave that at the last committee meeting, if you recall correctly. And at the end of the meeting, it was clear from several members of the council that they had ongoing questions and that they wanted to pursue those with representatives of Shelbourne. And so that's, I believe, the purpose of this special meeting of the committee. I, too, like Amy, would be happy to answer any questions about the agreement. I believe that all the members of the council received a sheet that was prepared by the Shelbourne folks, which articulates the series of events that started with the first agreement, the tax fixing agreement, through the present. My view of that is it's quite accurate. I think it reflects the material that I went through and the time frame that I prepared for members of the council. So I think that the gist of this committee meeting is to allow members of the council to ask questions of Mr. Schlossberg and Mr. Lazowski and others.
Thank you, Mr. Corporation Counsel. I'm sorry, Mr. Schlossberg, I did not see you on the screen. Have all members had an opportunity to review the timeline that was provided to us by Corporation Counsel?
I have.
Okay. If it's okay, can we just give a either Mr. Schlossberg or Mr. Lazowski or Mr. Schick for that matter, just provide us with a synopsis as to the development of the Talcott Plaza and what has transpired and where are you looking to go from here per the timeline that you have provided.
Sure. I'll try to do it very quickly for you. Thank you again, Chairman and the other council members for the time. It became obvious to us after a lot of work, as the timeline shows you, that we would have to go back to the original plan, which was delineated, spelled out very clearly in our agreement with the city, which was to demolish all the structures at the premises. We had tried, we spent a lot of time and money last year trying to work a plan that kept the existing structures, the parking structures, the old garage, the old department store, the bridges, and it became obvious to us through the work that we did and that we shared with the city that that would be a financial impossibility. The costs were just too excessive to do that. And so at the end of the summer and the beginning of September, we engaged in discussions with the development office of the city. And we told them that we had noticed them before, but we formally told them that we wanted to apply for permits to demolish the structures. We had several conversations. We were advised by Ms. Chambers that we would need to do historical review. We followed the appropriate papers to move that forward. Our goal was to try to demolish all the structures, to start that process before the end of 2020, which was our obligation under the agreement. And we had a meeting and several conversations with Preservation. And it's become obvious that Preservation's position is that in no way do they want us to comply with the agreement, and that knocking down specifically the bridge would be something they would be very against. Truthfully, we're not happy with that decision. We love the bridge. We think it's beautiful. We think it has a tremendous amount of character, history, and would be very, very important to save. But unfortunately, because of our understanding with the city, because of timing, because of the financial considerations, we could not figure out a way to save the bridge as it is right now. We did spend, again, time and money, and we have continued on the process to figure out a way to how to remove the bridge, which is unsafe, but to remove the bridge, or at least the cladding, the windows, the clocks, those things which have historical benefit to them and history to them, to remove them very methodically. We presented that plan to the city through an architectural firm that specializes in these types of historic things. And we are very much in favor of trying to remove the historic parts of that bridge and then reconstructing it on a safe and secure platform someplace in the redevelopment of Talcott, Maine. So what happened, I believe, was, and maybe the Corporation Council should really speak to this, because we were required to finish this at 2020, and Preservation would not give us the go-ahead, and we couldn't get the permits to knock the building down. We're in the position where now we are going to continue to go through to work with Preservation, work with the city, work on certain alternatives. We are working on many alternatives, including some development. It is very complicated right now because of COVID. It's very difficult right now to get any real interest in to do something with that site. And so we had asked for 180 days from the time Preservation approved whatever we would work with them on, whether it's removal of the bridge and restoration, or some way to secure the bridge in place, creating a new foundation structure to hold it. We were requesting 180 days in which to work that, from the time that gets worked out, in order to commence demolition. The demolition of this building is very complicated. It's complicated because of the type of building it is, the size of the building, the original structure, the proximity to the highways, the street on Talcott. which is very small, and how you deal with traffic and pedestrian traffic. It's very complicated because of environmental conditions. It's complicated because the Hartford steam lines run through the building and perhaps through the bridge also. It's a complicated procedure. It's a procedure that requires us to go to several potential demolition specialists to try to do it. We've been working very hard in preparing RFPs for that. But the bottom line is we can't just have a plan that we can execute on in any amount of time until we know exactly where our preservation, the city, and our interests come together and how we make a deal. I think just to end, Corporation Council had asked us to shorten that period from 180 days to 120. We were agreeable to that. And then the council stepped in. And I think that brings us up to the council.
Thank you for that timeline. So one of the questions that I have, and I'm not sure if any, before I ask my question, is there any member of your team that would like to add to your synopsis?
Hi, this is Aaron Wazowski. I just want to thank everyone for all that you do, Chairman Clark and everyone on council. And I think this is a very important redevelopment that's been extremely difficult to figure out. Shelbourne, we're lucky we have Shelbourne engaged in this process. We are partners with Shelbourne on the project, but they're the managing partner. I do believe that there's a great opportunity for future redevelopment on this site as times get better, and we are working on some of those. And just, I think, you know, we actually need the time after we get the approvals to get demolition in place and other things to get going. So the 120 days from the time of approvals is really important, and we appreciate your understanding and consideration.
Thank you for your addition to that. This question is for Amy. Is the Historic Preservation Commission scheduled to meet this month? When would the developers, Shelbourne and Laz Parking, would be able to go before them for approvals?
Thank you. So I just want to clarify a couple things with regard to the timeline. We did, in fact, begin having discussions early in the summer. The Planning Division received actually the formal application request for demolition in the end of September and scheduled the matter to be heard by the Historic Preservation Commission in October. We opened the hearing then. When matters are opened before the Historic Preservation Commission, they are required to either render a decision or obtain consent to extend within a 45-day period. The Historic Preservation Commission, at the time that we received the application, both the staff and the commission found that there was significant information still needed in order to really render a decision with kind of all of the information on the table, including an assessment done by a third party, which the Shelbourne and Laz representatives agreed to provide, as to how they might treat the bridge if it were to come down. Something that we'd raised that we definitely would want to have seen in our meetings over the summer. We did do a site visit in November so that the historic commissioners could actually put eyes on the site itself and the bridge. I would only say to that end that while we, the matter is still open and that the commissioners, have deliberated, they have not rendered a decision one way or another with regard to the request for demolition. And most recently, we heard the matter or opened the matter again to request the Shelbourne representatives to have an extension to the request in order for this process with council to take place. So the Historic Commission has met every month over the course of this year. We've not missed any meetings, and we have acted within, I would say we've acted within the appropriate timelines and acted promptly after receiving information from the applicant. I would only add as well that after the consent was given for the most recent extension, that the matter is expected to go back before the Historic Commission in the February meeting.
The February meeting. Okay, thank you. In your view, with the partial extension that was provided, would there be enough time, or the full 120 is sufficient amount of time, or would there be more time needed?
Well, I'll speak specifically with regard to the rendering of the decision of the Preservation Commission. I do know there are other elements of the agreement, and perhaps the Economic Development team can weigh into that, or again, Howard. We asked in the initial report that was written for the assessment, as I mentioned, and for some additional information. We are expecting that the applicants will provide that information in order for the commission to be able to render a decision on the matter. Essentially, if they do not have all the information that they need, and the applicants were not able to provide it and not willing to consent to additional extension, then the matter would be denied before the Preservation Commission, and they would have to reapply when they do have that information. We did receive the assessment report. I believe it was about a week to 10 days ago, but that is all I've received to date. I think there are a few other conditions on the initial report.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Add to that, the resolution that's before the council states that Shelbourne Laz would have 120 days to do the demolition, and if necessary, secure the bridge. 120 days following the issuance of the permits. So it's not 120 days for both the process for completion of the issuance of the permits and taking down the demolishing the parking garage.
Thank you, Mr. Corporation Counsel, for that clarification. And thank you, Ms. Chambers, as well. I'll open the floor to any of my colleagues for questions. Any questions? Councilman Gale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I get, well, I have a series of questions, if that's all right, Mr. Chair. A couple on historic and a couple on to the developer. Let me start with the developer, if I may. The agreement that was entered into with the city was initially agreed to by council in January of 2018 and eventually reduced to writing in July of 2018, and provided upwards of $10 million of tax relief to the Shelbourne parties. And I guess when I say Shelbourne parties, I think that includes partnership with Mr. Lazowski as well. But the quid pro quo for that was a $10 million investment in Talcott Plaza. And we are now 3 years into this. There's been 3.5 years worth of, actually 4 years now. Your January tax payment's due, so there's been 4 years of tax benefit that's been had. So of the $10 million of tax benefit, I suppose Shelbourne's received about $8 million worth of tax benefits to date. I'm wondering how much have you invested in the development of Talcott Plaza to date? If you can give us an update on that.
Sure. And I don't want to be confrontational. After the last meeting, and I would really ask Corporation Counsel to really lay out the facts here, because the facts that you just laid out are not really what our agreement was. First of all, when you characterize it as a tax break, the taxes that you're talking about were in litigation. This was a proposal that came from the city jointly with us to settle tax litigation. We didn't get a tax break. As a matter of fact, we pay our taxes on our buildings. We agreed to reduce the taxes to what everybody agreed was a fair amount, and in consideration of that, to invest $10 million. So it's not a tax break. There was a deal that was made here. The city was sitting with a building that is an albatross, that is a dangerous building. Taxes of over $3 million were unpaid on this building. We were not in the picture. And by the way, you mentioned that this tax break was to Laz. It was not. It ended up being on 2 of our buildings, 100 Pearl and 20 Church. Okay? Again, it was a tax deal to settle litigation. We gave it the right to challenge the taxes, and the city agreed that we can invest the money. Number 2, and I think Corporation Counsel has to weigh in on it, and I don't know, I'm not sure why we're being painted this way. When you said that we agreed to invest $10 million in Talcott is not correct. We agreed to invest $10 million into projects in the city. And I will tell you that as of today, we have invested way in excess of $11 million of development money, 4+ in Talcott directly in Talcott, $7 million on Pratt Street, and then on Ann Street and on other things that we're doing in the city, we've made those investments already. We are going to be way ahead of the $10 and then $15 million that was then the amount was increased to. Now, in all fairness to Councilman Gale, after our conversation last week, he did point out discrepancies between perhaps what the council authorized and our agreement. But the Shelburne agreement, and unless the Corporation Counsel, I'm not looking for a fight here. We're trying to do something here to help the city and to help ourselves. And it's not easy in these times. We just had a whole thing about COVID. This is not simple to do this in these times, but the facts are the facts. We were obligated to invest $10 and then $15 million in development in the city over a period of time. We are where we should be, if not ahead of it. Number 2, we were obligated to knock down all the structures at the premises. So, Councilman Gale, I don't think your argument is with us, and I don't think your questions are to us.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I've attempted to share the screen. Is my document up on the screen for everybody?
Yes, it is, Councilman.
All right, so if I may, and then I'll come back to my question that I asked because the question hasn't been answered, but let's just walk through. This is the agreements that were sent to us from, I believe, a representative of Shelburne. This is the first page of a 23-page document. And the second page, page 4, is the tax fixing agreement. So this is the agreement that was written and signed by all parties in July of 2018. And this agreement says on page 1 that Shelburne plans to make certain investments in the city in the amount of $10 million in accordance with a resolution adopted by the Court of Common Council on January 22nd. So that's the preliminary statement. And when we go to paragraph 5 of the agreement, and you can see I've highlighted these things, paragraph 5 says, subject to the provisions of section 9, Shelburne shall invest in the city in the amount of $10 million at its own cost and expense, subject to section 9. So let's go to section 9 to see what the subject to is. Section 9 right here indicates that Shelburne companies agree to construct certain improvements on the Talcott parcels at their own cost and expense. The value of those improvements, in accordance with the provisions herein, shall have an aggregate value of not less than the dollar amount calculated as follows. And the formula is the development fund, that $10 million, minus the amounts that have been paid on delinquent taxes, because another part of this agreement calls for Shelbourne to pay delinquent taxes. So, I want us all to be on the same page here. This document says to me pretty clearly that Shelbourne, and that was always my understanding on council. And if we go to the council resolution, which I think is following here, hang on a second, let's see. Here's the council resolution that was passed, and you can see this says this is certified, that this was passed at a meeting on January 22nd. I've highlighted the agreement calls for an investment of $10 million in the redevelopment of Talcott Plaza. So this is the contract that Shelbourne has entered into. And if we fast forward to the most recent amendment, First Amendment to the tax fixing agreement, this amendment now takes that development fund and increases it, paragraph 5. It increases the development fund by $5 million up to 15, but it extends the time frame for actual development out to July 13th of 2028. And it then further says that under paragraph 13, except as expressly modified here, all of the terms and conditions of the earlier agreement are in full force and effect. So, I think that's a pretty fair reading of the contract. And my understanding, and I'm shocked to hear that Shelbourne would think otherwise, my understanding always was that Shelbourne had agreed to invest $10 million in Talcott Plaza. In fact, if we go back to that earlier agreement, it defines what the development has to consist of. It has to at least consist of a 2-story parking garage. You can see right here, the beginning of paragraph A, 9A, it states very specifically, for the purposes of this action, for this section rather, the term improvements mean construction at a minimum of a 2-level parking structure, providing approximately 400 parking spaces, which construction shall be suitable to support future construction of office, retail, and residential space on the parking structure, or alternatively, will construct the office, retail, residential on the Talcott parcels not occupied by the parking structure. So I don't think we have any disagreement, Mr. Schick. That's the agreement that the city has entered into, and that's the agreement that I, as a council member, expect to hold Shelbourne to. We expect to see some development on that Talcott Plaza. And so I go back to the question that I asked you, which is to tell us, sir, how much have you expended in furtherance of your obligations under this agreement, which to me would be, how much have you spent on the delinquent taxes and how much have you spent on the development of Talcott Plaza?
So the answer to your question first is about $4.3 million. Secondly, if you look at the agreement, and again, this is maybe for lawyers to talk about, it's not for me, it's way over my pay grade. There's an entire history with the city, spreadsheets of how we're going to spend the money. But if you look at your agreement, first of all, we will spend $25 million at the site minimum. And even by what you read, we have until 2028 to do that. There are provisions in here for us demolishing the building and leaving it as a surface lot for a period of time. We didn't focus on those. We will spend more than $15 million here. There's no question. Just the demolition of this building alone is about $4.5 to $5 million on a good day. So we're in compliance with the agreement. If we're not in compliance with the agreement, I don't know why we have to debate this. I don't mean to be adversarial. The city should be taking a position with us. And if they think that we are not keeping to our obligation, they should be very clear about it. Because we can be very clear what these agreements are, what we've done, and what we will continue to do. But under the agreement, we still have to knock down the building. If we don't get permission to knock down the building, this transaction is an impossibility.
Thank you for that. I have one other question for you then. On the assumption, I mean, we've all assumed you're going to be able to knock down the building. I assume that you're going to work something out to preserve the structure, but you're still going to be able to knock down the building. And the goal is to build something new. I'm wondering to what extent you've engaged architects, have preliminary drawings, can share anything with us as to what we could expect to see per our agreement coming on Talcott Plaza.
So I'd love to answer that question. I can tell you, Mr. Lazowski can tell you, we have been spending an enormous amount of energy in the last 3-4 months coming up with alternative plans. I cannot say this publicly. We have a very credible potential non-for-profit tenant that we're working with. We are in our 3rd round of architectural design on what could be a game-changing structure for Talcott, Maine, and also for the city. We are not sleeping. We are working very, very hard. There were meetings today about this. There'll be a big meeting with the board of the non-for-profit, I believe, on Monday on this. And as soon as we get more buy-in, we will engage with the city on it. And in fact, it may be the ultimate solution to not only redeveloping this piece of property into something that really, really helps the city, but incorporating the bridge, hopefully in the position it's in, into a new structure. But knocking down this building and leaving the bridge standing is not something Shelburne Labs right now we believe we can do. So we're looking for alternatives. And that's part of the reason why we need the time, because we want to save the bridge and we want to help preserve the historic nature of this and other things at this property that should be preserved, including the fact that it's the site of the first free African-American church in the state of Connecticut and the 3rd in the entire country, which is something that has been totally overlooked by everybody until Shelburne brought this up and engaged with some of the stakeholders on it. So we want to do the right thing here, but you're in COVID, you're requiring us to knock down the building under the agreement by a certain time. This is not a simple project. And to do it the right way, we need time, and we need to be able to come to an agreement with preservation first in order to know how we're going to knock down this building.
So last question, if I may, Mr. Chair. I heard Ms. Chambers indicate that the Historic Commission is looking for two pieces of information from Shelburne. And by the way, Mr. Schick, I mean, I'm terribly appreciative of everything you just said. I can't wait to see the architectural drawings. This sounds very thrilling. So, kudos to you. Just want to, we just want to make sure this keeps moving forward, or I want to just make sure it keeps moving forward. I heard Ms. Chambers say that they were looking for an assessment and some additional information and that she had the assessment. And I'm just wondering if you expect to be able to give them the additional information by their February meeting.
I am not sure what Ms. Chambers is talking about. I was going to say that before you answer the question. We gave Ms. Chambers a mitigation plan that was prepared by Building Conservation Associates, very, very detailed. So if there's something else that we're being requested to do, again, the city may make requests, but nobody has agreed. We agreed on actually to do this mitigation plan. I don't think there's anything that we've agreed to that's still outstanding. And if Ms. Chambers wants to address it, I'm more than glad to answer.
Yes, so the report that the staff wrote in the October meeting, which was reported on in that meeting, has 5 recommendations. One, that the options for reclaiming or removing the 2-story neoclassical style pedestrian bridge should be presented along with estimated costs associated with each alternative. 2, that an intended plan for reuse, reconstruction, or repurposing of the copper cladding, windows, and clock materials salvaged from the bridge, if preservation and restoration is indeed not feasible, be provided. 3, strategies and plans for demolition to minimize damage to the adjacent structures during the removal of the 2 pedestrian bridges. 4, the proposed design and treatment for the remaining structure of 950 to 960 Main, the original GFOX store building, where the 2 bridges are currently connect to 3670 Talcott, will be removed. And 5, conceptual cost estimates for the proposed demolition, removal of all structures on the parcel. That was reported during the meeting, and during that meeting, you all agreed to provide that information, and that the application would be tabled until that could be provided.
I respectfully, I do believe that item 2, which is the mitigation plan, we said we would do. I think in conversations, again, we weren't asked, the staff made recommendations. We weren't asked, and I don't know what we consented to. But item number 1, I think we pointed out several times, is a item which is going to be more than $100,000, take several months to do, and we're dealing with a reality here. If the city believes that the bridge, the structure of the bridge, I'm not talking about the historic nature, the structure, the concrete, the steel, it's falling apart. To spend another $100,000 to say it's falling apart, we're not prepared to do. And this goes to the heart of the problem of what our obligation is. Our obligation is to demolish the structures. We are more than happy if somebody wants to come in from the city and do an assessment, we're fine with that. But for us to go out and do another assessment on something that we know is coming back, and items 3 and 4, really, you're already assuming that we're knocking down the bridge. We have $200,000 and some odd thousand. I think Jane and Alan are on this. They know this number. Well, there's $200,000 just to write an RFP to construction companies to make sure that these structures and the bridges, when they're removed, are removed properly and that the damage is mitigated. For us to do the RFP now to give to you is putting the horse before the cart before the horse. It's not a request that we can comply with until we know what we're doing. And it's again, and Councilman Gale, I'm sitting here answering these questions. The question really is, let's go away from the money for a second. Our obligation is to knock down all the structures. It does say that clearly in the agreement. The city wants us now to change that. We're happy to change it if it's viable and it can be done at the right cost and it can be done as part of a plan. But to put the onus on us is A, not fair, and second of all, it's not doable right now.
So respectfully, if I could respond to that quickly. So we had a couple conversations back and forth with Corporation Counsel with regard to the last point that Mr. Schick made. The agreement also states that all of the requests made within that agreement for demolition be done in accordance with all municipal codes and statutes, which would mean that because you are in the historic district, you are subject to historic review. I think that we've been pretty open over the course of time that the concern really is the bridge and not the parking garage structure or even office building structure. We did have conversation in the past about potentially trying to save the office building structure in order to save the bridge, because I think there's some disagreement as to the actual state of the bridge or state of disrepair of the bridge itself. With all that being said, the request from staff was for conceptual cost estimates, and considering the breadth of and scope of the request, and the fact that it is such a rare structure in the city, I think that the staff and the Preservation Commission are well within their right to make those types of requests. We want to be able to support the requests that you're making, but we have to do that with as much information as possible, and as well, address some of the concerns that have been raised as to, what happens to the bridge, what happens on the site, what happens to the building that the bridge is attached to that you don't own. Those are all questions that we have to have answers to in order to be able to render a decision properly. So I appreciate that, it costs to do those sorts of things, Mr. Schick, but we do need to have that information in order to move forward.
Okay. First of all, I think what you're saying is that when the city entered into this agreement, I'm not saying what you're saying, but are you saying that when the city entered into this agreement with Shelbourne to demolish the structures, that the city knew that these structures had historical significance, needed to be saved, and wanted Shelbourne to deal with those in the process? Is that the catch-all?
All I'm saying is that the agreement that exists between you and the city requires that you do the portions of the things that are named in it in accordance with the regulations that exist. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, because the issue of historic is very clearly for everybody, because it's been a long night, and this issue never came up, and in fact, it was Shelburne and Laz that brought this issue up to the city. Way after, in 2019 and 20. But if you're asking us to do another study, and you want us to spend another $100,000 to do it, then give us the time to do it. It can't be done in 2 weeks, and it can't be done. I'm sorry. I think there's somebody raising their hand.
Thank you, Mr. Schlossberg and Ms. Chambers. And I think probably this warrants a further discussion between the two entities in the city, i.e. Corporation Counsel and our head of development services, so that it can be a clear understanding, because it does appear that there is some understanding that has gone along the way that has not been addressed up until now, since this item was brought before us. So I do see my other colleagues have questions, and I would just preface and say, for the sake of time, because I know everyone is tired, if you could just please provide some brief comments, hopefully that they will you will be provided with some brief responses. So I'll go in order of hands. I'll see Councilman LeBron.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate this opportunity to talk, and I'll try my best to be brief. Mr. Schick, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Schick, I know we've been on the same calls. It's been a long night. Thank you for staying with us. The first question I had, when the building was purchased, who owned the bridge? Was the city? Who owns the bridge? When you initially purchased the building, was it your understanding that the city owned the bridge, or was it your understanding that your organization owned the bridge?
So we didn't purchase the bridge. The transaction of the bridge was part of we didn't own the bridge before we entered into the deal with the city.
Right.
When we entered into the deal with the city, a short period thereafter, pursuant to the agreement, we purchased the structures, which included both of those bridges. And there are, which is, I don't want to talk too much, I already did, but in response to Mrs. Chambers, the issue of the building that's adjoining, that's covered by easements and obligations of the parties, and we purchased it. That's correct.
So you purchased the bridges. The bridges were part of the entity, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So that's the first thing. And so understanding that, I'm sure, from a business sense and a business model, whenever you go into any kind of transactions, you take those things into consideration, right? So I would imagine that those things were taken into consideration prior to the purchase, correct?
What was taken into consideration was that we were going to demolish both of those bridges and the structures. That is correct.
Right. And so then the historic preservation came in, and we all believe they're beautiful structures and all that good stuff. And that's why we're here, right?
4 years later, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. So, because I'm trying to clear it up, because I'm getting calls and text messages from constituents, and the conversation seems to be expanding, and it's making it very confusing for our constituents in Hartford. So I want to just kind of bring it all together. So the last question I have, you said that there was, you keep referring to costs, and if you look on page 1 on the timeline of events, it shows that contractor, Structural Technologies versus Walker Parking, and it looks like there's a differentiation in the amount of costs associated, which seems to be the underlying problem. Is that correct?
It's the underlying problem as to why, when we looked into trying to save the former warehouse parking structure, we abandoned that avenue.
Right. So lastly, my last question is, since this is a cost issue, can you give us a definitive where that cost differentiation changed, and what is that line of demarcation in terms of cost where it's now become too costly?
Okay. So just again, when we did this deal with the city, the cost that we looked at was the cost of demolishing the structures.
Correct.
When we came in 2019, we asked the city council for an extension. The reason we asked for an extension is because we're trying to figure out how not to demolish the building. To demolish the building is very complicated. So we took the time to go to the Desmond and the others. The difference, the demolition, which was our initial plan, was a budget between $4 and $5 million. That budget it probably will go up, but between $4 and $5 million for demolition. When we looked at renovating the existing structure, so we decided we couldn't do it for two reasons. Number one is it was never built as a parking structure. It really can't hold a parking structure, a modern parking structure, and you would end up with this arbitrage in the city, which it's in everybody's best interest to get rid of. It's not, it doesn't meet any, if we didn't get there tonight, it doesn't meet any code, any landscaping, any setbacks. It's just this bland piece that is, it's just horrific. So we looked at the cost of doing that. When we looked at the cost was started off at around $15 or $18 million. But when you go into a project of this type, the unknowns, the amount of cement, concrete, the slabs, the technical ways you have to remove, the amount of money it would cost us because it abuts the highway, and you'd have to do it with certain types of equipment, grading it, filling it. When they started to take this apart and look at what the actual numbers were, I believe that the number exceeded $23 million, and that was just the beginning. And that would be just to give us an empty structure. I'm sorry, that would be to give us a structure that we'd have to then retrofit into a parking lot, which is not the ultimate use. It's only a partial use of what we want to do on that parcel. We think that parcel in the city deserves an entrance to the city, a much grander, beautiful piece of architecture than the old parking lot. So it's the cost and it's the vision that we have for the city that drove us to say it's too expensive and it doesn't do it anyway, and we're going to end up not doing the right thing, so we need to abandon. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so thank you for that. I guess what number, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, this is the last one. Is there, so $23 million is too expensive, so 20 million isn't, you can go ahead with 20 million, 23 million is too expensive, is it somewhere in the middle, 21.5? That's what I'm trying to just get in terms of a number, and I'm not gonna hold you to it, because I realize, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not really the right person to answer this question, but from my involvement in the project, the cost would have to be closer to 15 and 18 to make it viable to renovate that building.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I just want to say, these two entities are major investors and major taxpayers in the city of Hartford. And some people may not think, but they have been doing their due diligence in trying to find meaningful ways to save some the historic structure and aesthetics of our city, in particular in the downtown area. And so the cost of doing business, and I've said this before, the cost of doing business in the city of Hartford can be quite expensive. And also too, in this area that we're at, I think sometimes we should be a little bit more flexible as to understanding when there are things that are being handed down as far as directives from various commissions on what these developers should do. That does take a considerable amount of time, especially if they're working within the budget. You definitely don't want to be going over budget, because that's going to short-side the project and we're going to get something a little bit less than. So Councilman, thank you for your questions, and Mr. Schick, thank you again for your responses. I think Councilwoman Surgeon had a question.
And then
Council President.
I'm going to make it really, really brief since of due to the timing, and it's been a long evening. Mr. Schick, if you could explain to me, because I'm a brand new council person, I wasn't involved in the last couple of years, and I didn't understand the development fund. Could you tell me a little bit about, is it actually funds is available to the city? Is the city managing these funds? I didn't know how to define that.
No, thank you for asking that. The development fund, I'll try to keep it short, I'm sorry. Our buildings, when we came into the city, we bought buildings under the ordinances with the mill rate at 773. Our first re-eval doubled or more the taxes on 3 of our buildings at the time. And we were going through the process that everybody else goes through to fight those taxes. The representative of the city council, I believe, the mayor's office, Mr. Lazowski, at that time, we were very, very keen, and we still are, on building a beautiful city and making the city work for everybody. We have a big stake right now in the city, and we have a building across the street. So in the process, the city came to us and said, "Well, how can we resolve this?" And we said, we came up with an idea, which was to create development money that Shelbourne Shelbourne's money, which Shelbourne would spend in a way that would help spur development in the city. Pay the taxes off, $3.1 million on this building. Those taxes were gone. Come up with a development plan for this building. At the time, parking was the only thing, and ironically, we just got off a call where the last thing anybody wants is a 900-car parking garage. So it's, again, we're being put in a position that we're getting squeezed on both sides. Okay, so the fund was money that Shelbourne committed to spend. I think Councilman Gale said 2028. I don't have the agreement right in front of me. And again, without debating where and how, but we were committed to rebuilding a structure on Talcott, which would be, again, a project in itself, which would be in excess of $15 million. We would be committed to trying to come up with a secondary use for that property besides parking, which we're still very committed to. And we would put other monies into the city. Some of those monies, as an example, we actually invested in our tech incubator, which at that time didn't exist. We invested $3 million into Upward Hartford to make a big difference in the city, to bring technology companies in. The city at that time had asked us to put money into things like they would tell riverfront recapture, into other projects that the city felt may be helpful to stir the development. That's how the development fund started. So in that process, when Pratt Street became a potential, we looked at Pratt Street and we said internally, we need to spend money. This is a great project for the city. We assembled the buildings. We've done 196 Trumbull is now complete and beautiful and partially occupied. And we're going through the process to try to do the next phase, waiting to finish CRDA financing and tax credits, to start tax credits. So we've been spending development money. We bought Ann Street to help spur development in that part of the city. We bought 3580 Main, quite frankly, not part of this deal, because even in our definition, the north, that part of the north was not part of this deal. We did it because we're trying to bring different parts of the city to be redeveloped, to bring energy, to give people housing, to restart the downtown. And that's where that 10 million, which became 15 million, was our commitment. And as I said before, just in a rough number, without even going through this, we're over 13 million. We're going to spend in equity in the next 3 years another $25 million in the city of Hartford, if we're allowed to. And I say that I'm saying something very personal now, but I'm saying it. I am born, bred, lived, schooled in Brooklyn, New York. I live within 1 mile of my entire life. And I know what it takes, we know it takes a lot to make all the pieces work. But we're in love with Hartford. Alan Lazowski has been the greatest cheerleader that and has inspired us. We brought Jeff Flax into the city, into the downtown. We are getting cream right now. I can't even begin to tell you. I'm sensitive to all this. Profits. We're in the city since 2013. I dare say that no one will look at our returns and say we are profitable. And by the way, we're an open book if you want. There's $100 and some odd million of equity in the city, and there's no sane person, and it's not my decision. I just work for the company, by the way. I have to stay up late, so but no sane company would have done this. We believe in Hartford. We believe in the vision. We're working with a lot of the stakeholders in various different parts. We do a lot of things very quietly. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should make press releases every time we do something. We try not to. We're here to do the right thing, but we're also, we're put in a position that we have to sometimes speak up and say, well, we need to be helped to do what we're doing. I mean, just the notion of knocking down this building during COVID, no one is thinking about it. And Alan, I'm going too long, but The only way anyone could build anything on this building is with CRDA financing, with a lot of other enhancements. In COVID, there are no banks, there's no money. It's like, it's a nightmare. And we're trying not to say, rip up the agreement and start over again. Because from a financial point of view, even if we built Talcott, Maine the way we're supposed to under the agreement, the numbers don't make sense from a business point of view. Again, we are working very hard to bring a major not-for-profit back into the city. And it could be a game changer for everyone. The community will love it. I don't know if we're going to get there. We hope we're going to get there. But we need the rope. We need a little space.
Thank you, Mr. Schick. I know it's, you know, from listening to you, you really, this is personal. This is a heartfelt speech I'm hearing from you. So I'm hearing that. So, you know, I know it's a really difficult time and we're all, unfortunately, you know, going through this pandemic. And I know it's very difficult sometimes to do business in the city, you know, but we're going to make it work some way or somehow. I'm sure we're working with the Development Service Director, you know, and the Corporation Council. You know, we're going to try to figure something out. Just one last question, Mr. Chair, and that is, you know, what type of funds are available through this development, through the development fund, and who makes the decisions, you guys or the city? Did I just die? Hello?
No, was that a question for Mr. Schick?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was for the development money. I'm sorry. So,
no, I'm just talking about the development funds. You know, who makes the decision regarding the projects that are eligible and what projects are eligible for it? You know, are you or the city? I don't know who is it in partnership with the city that, you know, which development projects are eligible for these funds?
So, as I said before, I think when we started this, we had certain targets. We obviously, again, together with the city, and I think the city supports this in a great way, and the development people in the city and everybody in the city believe that, you know, doing Pratt Street and Temple, 15 Lewis, you know, these are all projects that are development projects within the city. These are all things that are very, very active right now. Just with those projects, we will spend way in excess of what our requirements are, triple. But they're not easy. We've spent over $7 million equity already from our money on Pratt Street. We're going to have to spend another 5 to 7 to finish Temple. There's 15 Lewis. There's Talcott, Maine. This is you know, it's a big project, and we will spend that. And we're also, by the way, we're very open and we've been very active again, listening to not-for-profits in the city, working with not-for-profits in the city in various different ways. Maybe again too quietly, but that's our company. Believe it or not, our company likes to stay low key, you know, we're there. We're there to help build the city. And I could, by the way, one thing Alan was asking, and I have to just say, because I've spoken so much, I might as well kill another minute. The council should be, first of all, the work that the city does, that the council members, Alan Lazowski, from the day that we started in Hartford, and we didn't come with the intention to be major owners in Hartford, it developed. Alan Lazowski, Sean Wooden, and some of the other wonderful people that helped us get into the city taught us, and it's true for the council members then and for now, we all believe that what you're trying to do, each one of you in your own way, even if we disagree with how we get there or what the method is or even what has to be done, everybody's has the same goal, which is to make Hartford what Hartford could be. And I commend everybody for that. And I also commend, because I think it's the longest period of time since I know Alan Lazowski that he hasn't said a word, which is amazing. But in truth, I mean, we're here. You know, Alan, I don't have to tout his one.
I can't get a word in edgewise.
I know. I'm from Brooklyn. What am I supposed to do? But we're here. We're here to make it work. We just need the help to make it work. And that's the same thing for the parking. It's the same thing for Talcott, Maine. It's the same thing for the local retailers that are suffering. We're out there. We have people who just almost full time now are dealing with people's problems and how to help them. And not because we have to, because that's what we do. We want to do that. We're outsiders. I'm going to say it straight. We're outsiders. We need to be accepted in the city, and we have to prove to the city and to the people of the city, more importantly, that we're here to help. And we're here not to just come in, rob the money, and leave. We are the only owners of commercial property in the city that own more than one building. We are the only ones. And everybody else, quite frankly, I'm not speaking to them. If they would fill their buildings, sell them, they'd be out of town next week. We're here to stay. We hope we're here to stay. And we share a common goal. We just need to try to figure out how, especially in these times, we get there.
Thank you, Mr. Schick. Really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Councilwoman Surgeon. Council President.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being patient, Mr. Sheik and Mr. Rozowski. We're now going on 3 hours, I believe, counting the prior meeting. So I want to echo Councilman Clark's comments. Thank you for investing in the city of Hartford and for staying here. I just have one question, and maybe for the development side, was there a community benefits under this agreement? I believe this was prior to me coming on council. As to why wasn't there a community's benefit added to this? Anyone?
I'm not familiar with a community benefits agreement with this. That might be something that the Corporation Council might be able to add in if that was placed into this the original. You're asking about the original resolution?
Correct.
The original agreement.
Original agreement was
Yeah.
either Attorney Rifkin or Mr. Matthews.
I want to say yes, but I'm not sure. I read so many of those agreements. I have to go back, Madam President, and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I want to say there was some language there, but it may have been another agreement I'm thinking about. But let me double check that for you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I. Charles. And on that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. Obviously, we're past our deadline for this resolution to be on Monday's meeting, so it will be on the last meeting of this month. And by then, I guess the couple of questions that we have, including the benefits clause, will be in sufficient time for Mr. I. Charles Matthews to get back to us.
That's true.
I'll second the motion.
The motion has been made by the Council President and second by Councilwoman Surgeon to send this item back to the City Council with a favorable recommendation, which Council President has noted that this will not, due to the time frame that has passed of our agenda date, this will not be placed on our upcoming meeting on Monday. This will be placed at our meeting at the second meeting of this month. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Councilman Gale?
You're on mute, Councilman
Councilman,
Gale.
you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would intend to vote in favor of the motion. I have appreciated having the representatives come before us. I think it's important that council have an understanding that I think it's important on both sides of any agreement, of any contract, that each party understands the other party is operating in good faith. And I think until we hear that, sometimes it's not clear. I think we've heard tonight plenty of evidence of that, and I hope that continues. And I am a little concerned about the historic preservation aspect of this. I certainly hope that the two parties there sit down and figure this out. It shouldn't be rocket science. How to take down that structure and put it somewhere until you can put it back onto another building. So I would hope that our historic commission can work with the developer and the developer work with the commission and make all that happen. So all that said, I intend to vote in favor of sending this back. Thank you.
If you any other discussion, seeing none, that all are in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All right.
Hearing, I can't talk, I'm sorry. Given hearing that the ayes have it, all voted in the majority, so there's no extensions and no objections. Councilman Sanchez?
Yes, although I'm not a voting member, I'd like to make a comment. It would be interesting to know if that structure, because it's a beautiful structure, is actually 2 floors. And I believe, even though they're calling it a bridge, I believe that's probably the first skywalk in the state of Connecticut. And realizing that it's 2 floors, what's the possibility? It's just a thought I'm throwing out there. What's the possibility in getting funding through the Historical Society, 1, and 2, taking that structure down, of course, using a gigantic crane, if we could take it down 1 piece and plant it on one of your lots, and now you can lease it out as a business there of some kind of restaurant or so.
Councilman, we are looking at using it as a bar, as an art gallery, as a
That would be awesome.
On front. Again, I can't share. I could share with the members privately, but until I get the okay from the non-for-profit, there are multiple. The one thing I think we can't do, just to be honest with you, it sounds easy, and Councilman Gale, it is rocket science. You can't just take a crane, cut it on 2 sides. It's going to collapse. If you go there right now, you'll see the condition that it's in, and the concrete will not. It's not that simple. If there's a way that we could do it, we will do it, and we'll work on it as part of a bigger project. But that we need to be able to incorporate it into a larger project. If we have to demolish, and again, this is something everybody here is sensitive the opposite way, was like you're going to demolish it and then what? You have no plan. That's true. We have no plan because right now economics say we'd love to build a skyscraper there. We'd love to build housing there. We'd love to build a retail, but no one's financing it, and you'll never get that project done. So timing here is crucial. It's really crucial, which is why working with the city and the stakeholders in preservation and the council to come up with a plan that's a win-win, it's going to take time. So it also requires flexibility. So that's really what we're asking for here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing that we have no other business to discuss, thank you to the members of the Development Services team, to the team of Shelbourne and Last Parking, Mr. Schick and Mr. Lazowski, thank you very much. This special meeting of the Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability is now over. So have a good night and God bless. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very, very much.